Welcome to Suburban Warrior, the podcast that will impact, inspire, and empower you to transform your mindset and become the badass warrior that you are. I'm your host and fellow warrior, Crissy Pfeiffer, former clinician and corporate marketing exec turned multi-passionate entrepreneur, performance and life coach, and mom to 4 not-so-little warriors. Each week, I will bring you honest conversations with inspiring guests to share their stories of resilience, optimism, success, and simple yet effective strategies so that you transform your thoughts and change your behavior to get the results you want in your life. You will be empowered to take action, warrior up, and believe in you. Let's do this. What's up, warriors? Welcome back to another episode of the Suburban Warrior Podcast. I'm your host, Crissy Pfeiffer, and today I have a very special guest with me. I have Haili Murch from the podcast, This is Legit Motherhood. She is not only the podcast host of Legit Motherhood, which is a podcast that is all about the real and raw things about motherhood and a place for moms to feel not so alone in their motherhood journey. But along with her podcast, she also started the Legit Motherhood Facebook community group, which is a place for moms to interact and support one another in their motherhood journey. She is also a podcast manager and happens to be my podcast manager. So in my humble opinion, she's the best podcast manager out there. And she helps other moms run their podcasts. She is married and a mom to 2 boys, loves to travel, write songs, and try new foods. And today, she's going to talk to us about something that I think is oh so important in our lives as moms, which is mom guilt. Welcome to the podcast, Haili. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to do this with somebody that I work with all the time. So it just feels so natural. So I'm just really excited to be talking with you. I feel like we talk weekly anyways, but in this kind of setting, I'm really excited. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I agree. It's, we've been working together for months now, and, you have been such a huge part of keeping me on track and inspiring me. And of course, helping me with technology and figuring out what it is I'm doing all the time. And, a lot of times when we talk, we're talking business, right? We're talking podcasts. Right. And I follow you on Instagram and you follow me and I listen to your podcast. And I was like, wait a second. I was listening to your last podcast and saw your posts about mom guilt. And I'm like, wait a second. Why did it take this long for me to have Haili on my podcast? Because, it's crazy. We all, a lot of my listeners are moms, and, mom guilt is just such a, it's such a tough thing that we're all experiencing in different ways each and every day. And I just love what you really had to say about it. So I'm really excited to, dive in specifically to mom guilt. But before that, tell us a little bit about your podcast, This is Legit Motherhood, and sort of why you launched that and why you do what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Crissy said, the podcast I started, This is Legit Motherhood, I started it almost a year ago. It'll be in August a year. And ironically, I kind of just started it because I was working with moms, other women who had podcasts, and seeing the voices that women kind of were putting out there in their stories and in all varieties, as you can imagine. I mean, podcast world is just like the book world, the movie world. There's something for everybody and there's a million things out there, but I was blessed to be working with a lot of women, and a lot of them happen to be moms. And I thought, man, like, I wonder if there's anything that I could like contribute to mom world, podcast world. And the one thing that kept coming back to me was just topics about motherhood that were sometimes too shy or too scared to talk about, and really digging deeper into it. But creating an environment where people felt safe to do that and felt like they were going to get good information versus just like, I didn't want to have a bash your family podcast or anything like that, but I just wanted a place where people could be real about it. And so I've been doing that. And along with that, I've been managing other podcasts. So it's been really great. And the Legit Motherhood community Facebook group goes just right along with it. I felt like we needed a space to be more interactive because the podcast is a great resource, but other moms couldn't really meet each other that way. And even Instagram, it's a little bit hard sometimes to really go back and forth with other people. So I was like, we need a space to like chat with each other and share. And so I started the group, and that's been going on for a few months. It's been really awesome. So it's been a lot of fun.
That's so great. And I have to say, I love the idea of, the podcast and the Facebook community as a space where moms can be raw and real and talk about, what's really going on a daily basis and where the struggles are. And it's not like, the perfect Instagram posts with their kids all perfectly posed or eating ice cream or, whatever. We all know that Instagram versus reality kind of thing. And,
Absolutely.
where we really need to dig deeper is just in our everyday lives of what we're experiencing and know that we're not alone, in that. And I think that's what your podcast, and your Facebook community does for everyone. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, you come follow me on Instagram or listen to it. I'm not afraid to be real. Like, I'm not like painting any pretty pictures for you. I'm telling you how it is. And you're going to see posts of my children crying and me, no makeup and my mom bun. I mean, you're seeing it all because I just think that people need to understand that that's really what it is day to day. So
yeah, because that's what, especially these days, right? Now more than ever. That's exactly what it is. Oh my gosh. So, okay. So then, let's talk specifically about the mom guilt that we feel because you're raising 2 little boys. You are working, you work from home. So at least most of the time, I think, and that adds a whole nother dynamic into mom guilt because you're not even leaving the house. But, everybody experiences mom guilt in a certain way. And so, tell me about sort of what do you think, when do you experience mom guilt the most and how do you recognize it?
Sure. So I feel like, especially lately, I think the biggest thing has just been the first thing that came to my mind was time. And I think whether we're in a world pandemic or not, that's something a lot of moms struggle with because as a mom, whether you're a working mom, you're like myself working at home and a mom, or you're just a stay-at-home mom, your time between your children, your spouse, your house, your appointments, your whatever you have, you've got to learn how to balance all that. So I think that one thing that I have gotten a lot better at, but definitely started out struggling a lot with was my time and feeling a lot of guilt on both ends. Like, oh, well, I'm letting go of my house today. So my house looks crummy and everything doesn't look perfect. And then on the other end, when I'm focusing too much on that and trying to make things feel perfect, that my kids get neglected. And then I feel guilty about that. And so that balance of just like, oh man, like I'm not really doing any of this right. I think that is kind of where it started for me, but I have to confidently say that I've gotten a lot better at recognizing it and also learning to let things go quicker. And that's not to say that I don't ever spend time with my children. My house is a total tornado. It just means that I don't spend all my energy and time worrying so much. I think that's kind of the key is I don't let that worry and that guilt linger as long.
Yeah. And I love what you said about, it's taken a while, but now you're able to recognize it and recognize when that thought creeps in your mind and you start to, mom bash yourself or tell yourself that you're not good enough and that you're not spending enough time here and enough time there. But the key is that now you're able to recognize it and kind of say, nope, I'm enough. Yeah. I'm doing everything that I can. I'm doing the best I can, and kind of just taking that thought and switching it to something else. Because mean, that's a huge part of it. It's just being able to recognize it and know that it's just, it's a thought that we're putting in our own heads and that we're creating for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree exactly with what you just said, that a lot of it is us, more than we think. I think sometimes we're like, this and this makes me feel guilty, but really you're telling yourself that, or you're putting those pressures on yourself. So a lot of it is coming from ourselves, really. So
yeah, totally. Because, let me ask you this question. So who do you think makes you feel the worst, like about your mom guilt, or when it comes to mom guilt, who do you think makes you feel the worst or puts that much pressure on you?
It's funny. I was looking at your questions and I saw this one and I thought, nobody really puts mom guilt on me. Like, it's totally me. I just had that moment of like, it's actually me. And I can't really blame that on others. Now, that's not to say that I haven't ever felt mom guilt because of other people. I mean, we all have moments in public where you get the stare from the older lady about how you're disciplining your child in public, or, what snacks you're feeding your kids at the party, whatever. Everybody's going to have those moments. But, a lot of even those moments is yourself. Like, the lady at the store didn't come up and say, "You're being awful." She just looked at me weird. And then I had the thought like, "Oh, I must not be doing it right." So it's not like, it really is just how you're talking to yourself, which I think is really interesting, because I know that's a lot of what you talk about is mindset. So I know it's a lot of just how we look at ourselves. And that's a huge part of it.
It is. And I think the reason I asked you that question and put that out there is because, listen, mom guilt is something that I struggle with since I gave birth, and I have teenagers now, and the mom guilt is just different. But I asked that question because of what I do, and so much of my own mindfulness and mindset practices. I've recognized that the fact that all mom guilt is completely self-imposed. Like, it's all me. Like, no one is putting the pressure on me. No one's telling me that I suck. Nobody's telling me that I'm not good enough. Just me. And then you get to the point where you're like, wait a second. Like, why am I the one that's beating myself up? I'm trying so hard, So I do think it's interesting to recognize that. Now, to your point, though, I do understand that that's not always the case. I mean, a lot of people are dealing with a lot of different circumstances. So I just think it's interesting to recognize, where is the pressure coming from? Where is the guilt coming from? And how can I, help to lessen some of that guilt?
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's get into that. What are some of your suggestions for when you are feeling that mom guilt? And what can you do to kind of get yourself out of that headspace?
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and combine this kind of with a story, if that's okay. But
yes, I would love that.
Yeah. So I shared this actually with my audience. So I'm happy to share it with yours, because I'm sure a lot of your audience hasn't seen this Legit Motherhood yet. But so the story I told was actually just recently, something I do with my kids when they start to get really whiny in public, especially, or just like really wild. I have boys. They are just wild. They have a lot of energy. And when they need to calm down, we play the favorites game. So I start saying, "Okay, guys, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite this?" And we kind of just ask questions, and they really love it. It's kind of cute, actually. And I got to the question just random in my head. I said, "What's your favorite thing to do with mom?" And I don't remember what my 3-year-old said, but I do remember what my 6-year-old said. And my 6-year-old just said, "I don't know, Mom. What do we do?" And like, it was really cute and it was really innocent, but I had a moment of feeling really guilty, because I thought, shouldn't my 6-year-old by this point be able to say, "I love to do this with you, Mom"? And I was like, oh crap, we're 6 years together and we don't have a thing yet. Like, it really bugged me for a second. And I had that mom guilt start to sink in. And this is maybe just, personally, like, I've just learned to recognize it more. I started to feel those negative feelings. And I think that's part of it, is just if you start beating yourself up and feeling negative and feeling like not happy, pretty much. And I started to feel that. And it was a great lesson. And this will be the only time I condone mom guilt as a good thing, is that sometimes mom guilt can trigger, if we're in the right place, some humility in things that we do need to change. So in that moment, although I felt a little bit sad and a little bit negative, I thought, you know what? That he didn't answer that like I thought he would. He didn't say like, I love doing this with my mom, but that gives me room for improvement. Like that's something that I can look forward to with him, or something I can work on with him. And instead of feeling bad about it, I just thought, well, then I can change that. But that's like one of the rare moments when mom guilt actually works in our favor, because I feel like a lot of times what mom guilt does is it just puts us in this spiral of all the things we're not doing right. And we don't give ourselves any space for the wins and the things that we are doing right. And so we just sit there and linger in these negative feelings, just going day to day, feeding children and getting them dressed, but we're not enjoying it. And I personally think that mom guilt is a silent killer to our joy in motherhood, because it's just taking away moments that we are doing good and we are winning and our kids are appreciating us, versus like always finding the moments where we're just terrible, and that's not true, because we're not.
Gosh. Yes. I mean, first of all, you said so much in that I just would love to touch upon, because, well, first of all, I do agree. I think the mom guilt can absolutely be the silent killer of joy, because I feel like some of the days when I'm most on edge or most frustrated and I'm snapping at people, it's because I'm unhappy with me and my own performance.
Right.
And most of the time it's of being a mom or
Yeah.
I'm not doing enough, or just feeling, So, and what is that doing? It's robbing me of the joy of just being in the moment and being present, and robbing me of that experience. So I love that you said that it's like the silent killer of joy, because I completely agree. And I also really want to go back to what you said about how mom guilt can be a good thing, because again, it's like when you're going through a really tough time in life and you're just like, feel like you're constantly just climbing up that mountain,
Mm-hmm.
but it's because you're eventually going to get to the top, and that's where the great view is, right?
Right.
Mom guilt can be a similar thing. It's really just, like you said, not all the time, of course, but in those moments like you had in that incredible story that you shared, is that you took the time to like feel the guilt, but then say, okay, wait a second. Why am I feeling guilty? Well, it was because maybe there's something that you wanted to change.
Right.
You want to change that. You want to have a thing, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
multiple things, or whatever it is with your son. And it wasn't until that moment that you felt guilty about not having it that you're like, okay, so now what am I going to do about it? How am I going to
Yeah.
take responsibility and make a change and create a thing with my son? So
Yeah,
it can be
absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, totally can be good. But we have to be willing to um accept that moment to be a moment of change. Like you're saying, it can't just be like that every time we feel mom guilt, then we put overwhelming pressure on ourselves on all the things that we need to change, right? So then it can have the opposite effect. So I think we have to be in the right place, and we have to be careful. Otherwise, it just keeps being mom guilt, right? It just goes in the same cycle.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Totally. Okay. I completely agree. So, do you have a strategy or a tip that you could suggest for sort of like shaking the guilt, for not letting it like kind of stew and make you frustrated and sad and upset?
Yeah, absolutely. So mine's more of a mindset strategy, in that it's just 5 good thoughts to have instead of feeling guilty. And so I'll just briefly go through them, but I think you mentioned this at the beginning, but the first one, and these are just things to tell yourself instead of beating yourself up. So one is that you are doing enough. So in the moments where you're like, oh, I turned the TV on too much today and I didn't get my laundry done. Well, what did you do? You got your kids dressed, probably fed them, and you probably had to do something around your house so that you didn't trip over toys, or I don't know. Something you did that day was enough, and you need to be okay with that. So be okay with that. And that goes right into that you're a great mom. So I think we start spiraling into that we're not doing it all right, and so we're not a good mom. But honestly, like, we're all great moms because we are, number 3, the best moms for our kids. I think a lot of times we do the comparison game, as us women do, and we go, well, I'm not doing it like her over there, and this family does this, so maybe I should do that. And that's where I think a lot of guilt comes in, of putting all this unnecessary pressure, that it's more like, well, what do your kids need? What does your family need? And recognizing that you were given to your children and your children given to you for a reason. At least I believe that. And accept that and be okay with that. And then the last 2 would just be, you don't have to be perfect. I know we briefly talked about this for a second, but the whole like Instagram, Pinterest world can be wonderful resources, but it can be terribly damaging if we linger in how things are supposed to be, or how we think they're supposed to be. And I think it's okay for us to want things to look nice or be a certain way. It's okay to have some expectations, but for you to live in the ideal, like, I have to have this perfect house and perfect children, perfectly dressed and eating organic food all the time. Like, it's just, you just got to give yourself a break. So like, don't feel like you have to be perfect. And then that leads into the last one, which is you cannot do it all. I think it's okay for us to want to be school PTA mom and, the Instagram mom and I work out every day mom. I think it's okay to want those things, but in certain times and seasons, we just can't be it all. As a mom of young kids, I might appear like I'm doing it all, like working from home and having kids, but like there's a lot of things I'm not doing right now that I would love to be doing. It's just not the time and the season. And I'm okay with that because that'll be later. And just accepting that you can't do it all. So those are just 5 things that like I start telling myself when I start to maybe feel that mom guilt or negativity, to just like get myself out of it, to be like, you know what, like, you are doing enough. You're a great mom. You were made for these kids. You don't have to be perfect, and you can do it. You can't do it all, Haili. You can't do it all right now.
Oh my gosh. Love it. I love all 5 of those. They're so good. They are such great thought replacements for when you are starting to feel mom guilt, and great suggestions to tell yourself, every single one of them. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
they're
no
awesome.
problem. I'm happy to share that. You guys need to tell yourself these things. I'm so like, wish I could put it in your brains. Like, just tell yourself those things because you're awesome.
I believe me. I know. I think I am going to keep those written down and remind myself the next time I'm feeling that I'm not enough, or, not doing it all. Everything's not perfect. The next time I see someone else's perfect Instagram post and I'm like, God darn it. Why can't I do that? The perfect French braid. I still feel guilty in my life. My girls are 19, 15, and 14. And would you believe I still have mom guilt over the fact that I can't French braid their hair? I mean, like real guilt about it, because I have tried so many times, but I'm going to remind myself that like, maybe I do something else really, really well. And I'm just not meant to French braid their hair. Just not meant to do it. Oh my gosh, Haili, this was amazing. I love everything that you have to say. And, I think it's really an important message for so many moms out there, where their kids are big, little, they're working moms, stay-at-home moms, a little bit of both, whatever. Everyone needs to hear this. So
yeah,
great advice and information to share. So tell us a little bit more about where people can find your podcast, This is Legit Motherhood, and where they can find you on social.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 2 biggest places would just be on Instagram at Haili Merch. And I assume that we'll have this in show notes or something.
Yes. Well, actually, it will.
I know we will. What am I saying? I will make the show notes.
Yeah. I love it.
Oh gosh, I totally forgot for a minute. That's so funny. Yes, at Haili Merch on Instagram. And then I would love for you to join the Legit Motherhood community on Facebook. It's a private group, and I did that on purpose because I wanted to make sure moms were coming in with all the same intentions and, wanting to connect and stuff. So it's a very safe place. I wanted to create something really safe for people. And right now, like, that's kind of what I got going on. I have some stuff coming for the future, but I don't have it together. So it is not to be revealed, but just know that if you followed along, you would see more motherhood resources and things coming your way. So I would love to see you join us.
I love it. A little teaser.
Yeah, there you go.
That's great. So exciting. That's awesome. So be sure to follow Haili. And, I just want to thank you again for being on the show. I really have enjoyed and loved working with you over the last couple months. And, I know that you are such a great mom and you are doing so much and are enough. And I feel very grateful to have met you and get the chance to work with you. And now to have you on the podcast. So thank you so much for being here today.
You're so awesome. Right back at you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, girl. All right, guys, check out Haili Merch on Instagram, join her Facebook group. And as always, please let us know what you think of this episode. Drop us a rating and review. And we will see you next time on Suburban Warrior.